I got exactly what I expected from The Art of Biblical Narrative by Robert Alter. And now that I'm done with the book, I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. The Art of Biblical Narrative seeks to reorient the way a reader approaches the biblical text, specifically the narrative or the prose in the Hebrew Bible. And it seeks to present the narratives in the Old Testament as stunning, beautiful prose designed by intentional authors and editors to help you know how a man should live before God. We are not to approach the Bible as a cold record of history, but as a beautiful, well-designed piece of art meant to communicate a specific meaning by the author. And to that end, Robert Alter clearly succeeds. But before we talk about how he succeeds, let me cover what frustrates me and annoys me about The Art of Biblical Narrative by Robert Alter. It's really Alter's view of the Bible. Alter sees the narratives of the Bible primarily as a work of fiction. Now, I do credit him that he does appear to lean in the direction of seeing the narratives starting with King David until the end of the Hebrew Bible. For the most part, he sees those as fallible human records of history. So he believes David and Solomon and so forth were genuine, real people in the history of our world. Although he does see Jonah and Daniel and others from time to time as fictional characters. And at times it's relatively easy for me to overlook his view of the Bible. But at other times it just really gets on my nerves. And I'm also frustrated with how quick he is to see contradictions in the text when I believe they can easily be worked out by the reader. Early in The Art of Biblical Narrative, I also thought I was going to find another ally in my disgust for the documentary hypothesis. That is the belief in separate authors or traditions. Typically, it's broken into three for the Old Testament. You have a Yahweh tradition, Elohim, and then a third priestly editor of the Bible. And I believe the documentary hypothesis is, for the most part, unsubstantiated garbage. And I was hoping that a lack of support for that hypothesis in the Dead Sea Scrolls would strike it down. And early on in The Art of Biblical Narrative, it appeared that Robert Alter was going to come against it. But then, alas, he ended up writing an entire chapter on it. So that's the bad. Seeing the Bible as fiction bothered me more than I expected it to, and it popped up throughout the book from time to time. But overall, I would say that the good very much outweighed the bad in The Art of Biblical Narrative. Robert Alter really proves himself to be a master interpreter of the Hebrew Bible, as one that most Christians could learn many lessons from, even though Alter both rejects Christ as God's Son and God's inspiration of the Hebrew Bible. So the question is then, how is Robert Alter a better interpreter of the Bible than the average pastor or seminary professor in the way he approaches the text? Well, it's simple. He pays more attention. He finds the details, the connections, the humor, the revelations in the text that the majority of readers miss. The key line to the whole book is, we must learn to perceive more finely in the Bible. You see, for the most part, you and I, we don't catch the fine details, the repetitions, the out-of-place actions and descriptions that illuminate and bring to life the text. Alter's exposition of the story of Judah and Tamar, one that many Christians and pastors miss or skip over by not realizing its importance in the overall narrative of Jacob and his sons. Alter's exposition of that story in particular is a masterclass in how to spot connections in one narrative to the passages that are surrounding it in the Bible. His work on David and his first wife, we need to remember the first wife of David was that daughter of Saul's, and It was really a brilliant example on how to examine those often overlooked characters in the Bible and why they are there and what they bring to the story as a whole. He really teaches the reader how to pick up on the subtle movements in the stories, the dialogue, and the characters of Scripture. Robert Alter helps us to see the importance of narrative, how narrative can instruct us with deep, emotional truths that no law or precepts or dry recounting of events ever could. Jacob and Esau teach us more on the dangers of lying and deception than any list of laws on honoring your parents or condemning lying ever could. To that end, I want to share one longer quote in The Art of Biblical Narrative, because I personally just loved it so much. Thanks to Alter, I will never see repetitions in the narrative again as something to breeze past because I just read that a few verses earlier, but instead I'm going to be looking even deeper with even more details to try to see what parts are left out or shifted or moved around. Alter writes for us, beyond this constant interplay through repetition between speech and narration, biblical personages and events are caught in a finer web of reiteration in the design of thematic words and phrases constantly reoccurring. No act or gesture is incidental, and the sequence of events is never fortuitous. Joseph may move swiftly from slave caravan to manor house, to prison, to palace. Through it all, the strong punctuation of verbal motifs repeatedly signals to us the direction in which he is heading, the purpose of his arduous path. The human figures in the large biblical landscape act as free agents out of the impulses of a memorable and often fiercely assertive individuality. But the actions they perform ultimately fall into the symmetries and recurrences of God's comprehensive design. Finally, it is the inescapable tension between human freedom and divine historical plan that is brought forth so luminously through the pervasive repetitions of the Bible's narrative art. I've never read a book before that so passionately highlights the art of the Bible through the skill of the inspired authors. So often our theological focus robs us from seeing the art, the finer details of the Bible, and Robert Alter helps us to see what is often overlooked beauty in the biblical narratives. In spite of my frustrations, I want to encourage everyone who desires to see the beauty of the Old Testament narratives to read The Art of Biblical Narrative by Robert Alter. And if you want to grow in your understanding of the Bible, if you want to discover overlooked books in Christian literature, I would encourage you to subscribe to the Rev Reads YouTube channel. And if you'd like Rev Reads to be able to connect with more people and to increase the quality of our videos, please join the team on Patreon at patreon.com/RevReads.